Hello everyone, welcome to the April 2nd Call of Duty DFS slate. As you guys could tell by the screen that you're currently looking at, the pricing is yet to be released. We're about 10 hours before lock. I hate to be making the video without COD pricing because it does matter so much, of course, in terms of construction and looking at values and that kind of stuff. And so we're kind of going to have to talk hypotheticals. We can have probably a pretty solid guess on pricing and stuff. But you never know. Like yesterday, they had New York priced as the underdog when they were the favorite, and all that stuff. So we can try to talk hypotheticals. As you guys can see, I was just looking at the maps and stuff to get an idea of what we're looking at here. So we can kind of quickly talk about recapping yesterday. So we had 5 matches yesterday. We can go through them. Of course, one of them was not on the slate. There was like a match of the teams that played. So London versus Paris. So we did have a pretty good read on this one. Honestly, I was a little concerned with London's upside here. We're not gonna have to worry about them going forward, and things are definitely changing pretty quick. And I think this is what's the exciting part of DFS is. Although pre-tournament I had high expectations for London, I think pretty quickly it looked like there was something a little bit wrong there. Obviously, I didn't end up getting to the Paris side. It did just seem a little bit too risky, but it was the correct side to be on. Fortunately, I was kind of half right there. I was on the full fade of London. I just think all the things combined, bad maps, pretty even kill spread, going up against a pretty decent team. They were super expensive as well. London was, so all those factors just led to me fading London, and it turned out pretty good. Nothing to really talk about here. They got the job done, but it got outslayed pretty hard. It was a pretty close series, and I think Paris is going to be kicking themselves for losing, honestly. So something to keep in mind. The next one up was the Los Angeles Girls against the Toronto Ultra. This one also kind of went as exactly as expected. I was a little surprised and didn't really understand why Toronto was the favorite. I thought people and the books, I should say, were overrating or kind of overemphasizing how much of a downgrade I guess Spart was going to be to Gunless. I do think Gunless was one of the better players on this team, especially from a DraftKings perspective and stuff. But from what we've seen so far this year, we've seen a lot of these up-and-coming players come through and dominate the league. We've seen some lesser performances, but I think even somebody like Jimbo, who came on and his first few series were really, really bad, after they had a little bit of time and a little bit of practice in, they actually are looking a lot better. I felt that way with Spart. I thought Spart looked really good individually the day before, and I thought he was going to be able to have a good performance here against Toronto, and he did. This one kind of went exactly as expected. I think even when you look at the scores and all this stuff, we could see Asim, Hook, Spart all do really well. Slasher was a little bit worse in the performance, again, because we do expect a little bit less from him just because of his role. He is that slower AR player. He's not going to rack up the raw amount of kills. His numbers were looking good, so it kind of hurt me a little bit. I had 100% of Slasher. I just thought he was playing a little bit too good individually, and I wanted to get him in at his super cheap price tag of 7K. He didn't kill me. I think he had like 108 points or something, so it was okay. But that's just kind of not what it takes right now, especially with how the slate was yesterday. If we looked at the slate as a whole, there were no sweeps, so all it did, like in those kind of weird scenarios where there is 0 sweeps on a slate, all it does is come down to who's winning or like who has the most kills and stuff. And as you guys could see, Slasher was on the lower end of the kills, lower end of the KD ratios, but we were looking okay through that. Then we head to the third series. This one was super, super disappointing, just from like a spectator view. Again, New York, they were up 2-0. They had a really, really, really good opportunity to sweep this series here in this third game. I don't know how they lost it. I really don't. I think, again, they were on the defense around 5, and if you guys are a little bit unaware of control, the defense is like a 80 something percent win rate or something. Like, it's pretty crazy. A lot of it comes down to you're pretty much playing those first 4 rounds to try to get defense on the 5th round that we can win the map. That's a lot of it, what it comes down to at the moment. They did all the work. They got to the defense on the final round and they lost it, I think. If memory serves, I think that's how it went. Watched a lot of Call of Duty, so I'm not sure. But they definitely could have had the sweep. Then they get reverse swept here, losing the rest of the maps. From a DFS standpoint, it still was fine. Hydra did well, Paul did well, Neptune did okay. Nobody on LA did that great, so you weren't really missing that much from this series either way. We knew New York was pretty underpriced. They got there in the DFS aspect. But from the money line, they should have had the sweep, and it was pretty disappointing that New York choked away those series multiple times in a row. And, in the losers bracket, they lost, and we're not going to be seeing them anymore, and that's a little bit unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. The last series of the day was the Optic Texas versus Minnesota one. This is what ended up kind of killing me in my lineups. I was maybe not 100%, but I was super, super heavy on Scump and Dashy primarily. I do think Shotzi was a little overlooked, but he was super expensive. I didn't think he was going to garner ownership, and there was some merit to getting onto him, but he was like 50% owned or something in at least like the $33 that mainly like where I put my investment in is like the $33 single entry. That's my primary target when I'm looking at these slates and stuff. So, I don't know what led people to going so heavily on Shotzi, but it panned out for them. I don't know. I can't blame them too much, I suppose, but everyone rode Shotzi when his numbers were down, and he ended up having a pretty good performance here. That's kind of what killed me there is I had Dashy, and he scored a lot less than Shotzi at about the same price. Scump did okay. I think he had like 100 something as well. So me going so heavy on Scump and Slasher is what killed me, and then obviously the Dashy versus Shotzi head-to-head killed me there. So I had a pretty poor performance overall from a DFS aspect. From a kind of game theory aspect, again, I thought we had a pretty good idea and pretty good reads on these games. We went 3 for 4. The one we did get wrong was the New York one. But again, that felt a little harsh because New York was up 2-0. They easily could have closed the series out. They just choked twice. They just choked so much. I think, is that the 3rd series in a row that New York choked? Let me check. No, not the 3rd series, but I guess the 3rd instance in 2 games. Pretty big choke job here from New York. I'm going to be looking pretty heavily on them for the future. Maybe when we do get around to the 3rd set of qualifiers, I think people are going to be on them a little bit. We'll have to wait and see. That's obviously a long road ahead, but New York easily could have won the 2nd map, this 3rd map here against FaZe. They easily could have won this 3rd map here against LA. Then, of course, they end up getting reverse swept here, losing the 4th and 5th maps as well. Pretty disappointing. And then the final match of the day was another like losers elimination game that was not a part of the DFS slate because it had 2 of the teams that played earlier. London versus LAG. LAG ended up getting the full sweep here. Again, pretty good performance from Spart. Hook. Slasher got there a little bit later on, but no more London. So we're down to, I think, 6 or 7 teams. I'd have to look and see where they're at now in terms of the brackets. So, I'm in the qualifiers. Major 2 championship. So we have, 7 teams remaining. Seattle, Atlanta, Florida, Boston, Texas, LA, and then LAG is waiting for... I think they're waiting for the loser of this game, which will be the winner of Texas, LA versus the loser of Florida, Boston. I don't know why I said Florida like 4 times there. That was weird. But either way, we have a pretty decent slate here. I'm going to quickly refresh, see maybe pricing came out. Nope. We're going to have to kind of, again, free ball it. No pricing and stuff. But it's going to be a little bit weird. But I actually think I have a pretty hot take here and something that we're gonna go back to the well with something and see if it works. Um, so first glance, again, I kind of want to keep doing the slate overview first. That way we have context of everything before we talk like game by game. I think it's a little bit better and can help add context to everything that we're saying and all that stuff. So um, first glance, three pretty big favorites in terms of the money line here. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of it, if I'm honest. I do think Optic should get the job done. It's just minus 700 feels like a crazy number for a team that's been looking a little shaky. I still don't think LA's back or LAT is back because they beat New York in such a weird fashion. I'm still really really low on LA. I'm surprised they even made it to top 7. Um, but I think this is where the road ends. I think they are going to be the 7th place team. I just don't think that price just seems a little crazy to me. I'm going to be intrigued to see how the Optic players are priced. I'd expect them to be super pricey. I expect Shotzi to be like 10,000, Dashy to be 10,000. Scump is probably going to be like high 8s, maybe in the 9s or something. It's going to be tough to get away from them necessarily, but we have some other spots I think I want to go to more. Um, for the picks and bans these games, I think they're going to be relatively straightforward. Um, so that's one thing that we do have going. For this one, I expect LA to ban Bocage. It's been their permaban. I expect Optic to get rid of Berlin since that's one of LA's better maps and it's one of Optic's worst maps, and that's something they ban usually anyway. So I expect us to get to the Gavutu, the Tuscan, pretty decent maps for Optic. I like the Dashy a good bit in those maps, but we can look at that in a little bit. I do think we'll have the picks and bans out for this series. As always, it is the first series and stuff, so we'll be able to check the Twitter. Sometimes I try to get that info out, but lately I've not been slacking on that. But the Twitter account at CDL Scrimtel, they usually get that info out. Or if you just search on Twitter like Optic Texas maps or Optic Texas and look for somebody who has the Call of Duty League link, the map should be there. Again, usually 30, maybe 45 minutes or so before lock, we'll see the first set of maps. I expect these, again, I feel like there is a small outsider chance that LA don't ban Bocage, but it's pretty unlikely. And again, we'll probably see it beforehand. The only reason I say that is because LA's or Optic's been looking a little shaky on it, and maybe LA just want to try something different. I'm not sure. I just think it's a possibility, really, really slim, probably like 5% or maybe even less. So keep an eye on, maybe worth changing up things for. If there is a Bocage, obviously I think slamming in Texas will make a lot of sense. But again, really, really unlikely. I just have kind of a weird feeling there where it's a possibility. That's all. The second series, Boston versus Florida. So we saw this matchup not too long ago. I think it was the Boston 3-0, if my memory serves. Boston with the 3-0 here. I think this is a pretty interesting one because I think in relative skill of these teams, I think this is actually pretty close. The odds have been going, I think, more and more in Boston's favor. I think when I first checked the odds a few hours ago, Boston was like only minus 300. They're getting bet up to minus 375. That's a little weird to me. I thought it would go the other way, if anything. I just think these teams' overall skill level is pretty close. I think the big deciding factor here for me is the maps and how they've been looking on them. So as we know, Florida's hard point is pretty much only been Bocage, and we know that's easily countered by just banning it. Like it's not rocket science there really. So, and we do look at these teams for bans. Obviously, I expect the same bans as last time, just because it makes a lot of sense. I don't think I don't think Florida has any avenue to get any different, and I don't think Boston has any incentive to get any different because, of course, they just 3-0'd them. Why would they change what just worked? So In terms of what to expect, I think Boston will ban Bocage because that's one of the only few maps Florida's been decent on. For the hard point, just makes too much sense there. Yeah, Boston or Florida will ban Berlin because that's a map that they don't play at all, and Boston have played it and they look somewhat decent on it. Again, I don't think Florida's played Berlin at all. Yeah, Florida's yet to play an official match on Berlin, so that's probably just gonna have to be their ban. So it's gonna be pretty brutal for them in terms of maps. Again, it's gonna be Boston getting the Gavutu. They're 4-1 on it. Florida's 1-2 on it. It's not a good map for Florida. Um, Boston 4-1. I think they're pretty good on the Gavutu. Um, it's just so much better for Boston. Again, they've been picking up their control. The control used to be their weak point. That's something maybe we can look at here. Yeah, Boston's only minus 140 in the control. I think it's a little risky, but I think it's close enough. I think this is a somewhat fine number actually. I think Boston should be maybe a little bit bigger of a favorite there. So, something I did realize afterwards, I probably should have known this beforehand, but it is what it is. When it comes down to the control ban, it actually in the tournament it actually goes to whoever's higher seeded. So we can get that, I believe, pretty easily from. Geez, what am I typing? So we go to Major 2 qualifiers. We can look and see. Yep, right here. So the qualifier seeds. Whoever's the higher seed gets to gets to ban the control. They're kind of dictating the picks and bans. So whoever's higher seed gets to pick the control. We know Boston's going to want to go to the Tuscan. Most likely, they're 3-1 on it. They've been a lot better on it. Florida's 2-2 on it. I think a lot of these maps are just favored for Boston. It's pretty tough for them, or for Florida. I mean, and that's kind of what it comes down to. I think overall skill set, these teams are a lot closer than it looks, but the maps are just brutal for Florida. And it's just hard to ignore how much that stuff matters. So it's going to be Boston. I just don't love it. I feel like Florida can win a map or two, and then if that happens, then of course as always it comes down to all we're doing is looking for kill with ratios and stuff. That's all we're looking for. It's just brutal. That's all I can say. There's not a lot to love there from the Florida side. I think if we'll have to wait for pricing and stuff. I assume Boston's going to be a little messed up still. I think Methods is still going to be pretty cheap. TJ Halley's going to be still kind of cheap. That's probably going to be, again, a wait and see situation. It's just a little tough to get away from Boston here, I think. I mean, Methods isn't playing too good lately. It's just tough to ignore. The only other, thing that I can kind of take a note of is that Awakening has just been so good individually. I don't think it's a bad idea to get to him either and just do a little bit of a different pivot that way. Again, that's a wait and see on pricing and stuff. Like if Awakening is under 8K or something, I think that's a pretty good play. It just comes down to how much leverage you can get on the field and stuff. If Methods is super cheap and everybody's going to be going to him, I think going to Awakening will make a lot of sense. I think there is a world where you can play them both. Honestly, you can go to Methods and Awakening. As we could see here, Awakening's been the best player on both game modes for Florida. And again, I preach this all the time. If it's not a sweep, which there is volatility here of a sweep again, then all it does is it comes down to the individual play performance. I think Awakening can do enough because he is so individually skilled. And again, I think these teams are pretty close, so I think Florida can win a Search and Destroy or something, maybe sneak a control or a hard point or something. Florida has enough individual skill to take a game, make this series competitive, and I think Awakening will thrive in that aspect. Again, it's just really hard to overlook methods numbers. So there, I think it's definitely fine if you want to go to methods and awakening. I might have like a few lineups like that, but I think overall I'm going to go pretty light on this series, mainly because of what's going on in the next one. So Seattle versus Atlanta, the third series. This one I think had, or I guess quickly we could kind of touch on the control. Oh, I guess I already did. It goes to the higher seed Boston. They should go to the Tuscan. So I think that's kind of close for both teams, but um, Tuscan control is actually a lot better than Gavutu control when it comes to DFS scoring. So something to keep in mind as well. I need to remember to talk about that. Kind of gloss over it in the first series, but Optic is the better team when it comes to the seeding. So they're going to be able to dictate what control map we get. And I believe Optic's going against LA. Jeez. So I expect. I mean, I don't think it matters what map they play, honestly, but Optic also wants to go to the Tuscan control. I think that's fine. Again, that's a fine thing in their favor. So both of these first two series, no Bocage hard point, but there's a Tuscan control. Some upside there. It's just I just don't love it. That's all it comes down to. So, yeah, we can go to the third series here. Seattle, Atlanta. Again, this is where I wanted to talk about the most. We're going to probably see a Bocage here. I don't think Seattle's banned Bocage I don't think Seattle has not banned Bocage since week 1. So I think they're definitely confident enough on it. They've beat Optic on it a few times, and I believe Optic is. I don't think Optic has beaten Atlanta or scratch whatever I was just talking about. I don't know what happened there. But the point again that I was trying to make is this series is actually kind of close. I feel like I'm not quite understanding why the odds are like this. I low-key kind of feel like Seattle's kind of back. Like everyone just kind of wants to not talk about this really. Like I feel like Seattle's kind of like they've been proving themselves a little bit, but nobody kind of wants to admit it, and it's a little weird to be honest. And I feel like FaZe are definitely really beatable as well. And we've, of course, have seen Seattle beat FaZe not too long ago. They beat them match number 7 here. FaZe lost to Seattle. And that was honestly, that was arguably even a worse version of Seattle. Again, the problem here is Seattle's so volatile. We could see them look absolutely crazy $1,000,000, and sometimes we see them look completely clueless. So it is tough to kind of back that sort of team against somebody with the Atlanta FaZe caliber. But I have not been that impressed with Atlanta FaZe. Like, they definitely could have lost that second and third game to New York. Like, they're looking relatively beatable. I think Seattle's a little underrated. I think this is arguably the second and third best team playing. I could see an argument for Seattle being the third best team in the league. At this point, I'd probably have them ranked there. It's close between Seattle and Boston as the third best team. It's definitely going to be Optic 1, I think, and then Atlanta 2. But I think the gap between all these teams is kind of closed a little bit. I feel like Seattle could definitely beat Atlanta here. I feel like this number's a little crazy to me. I like going Seattle. And here's the thing as well. So when we're talking about picks and bans, Atlanta's going to ban the Berlin. That's a map they've been taking out a lot. Seattle's 2-0 on it. It makes sense. Seattle's been banning, I think, Tuscan and Gavutu off and on. And Atlanta's 4-1 on Gavutu. Seattle's 0-2 on Gavutu. I fully expect these bans to go this way. So that means we're getting a Bocage. That means we're getting a Tuscan. In terms of what control we're going to get, that's kind of the problem here. We know, Atlanta's the higher seed. They're 5th. Seattle's the 8th seed. So Atlanta's going to pick which controller we get, and that means we're going to get Gavutu. Seattle has not been good on Gavutu control. That's the problem. Seattle is not good on Gavutu control. Well, they're not good. They're yeah, that's just kind of what it comes down to. They are not good on Gavutu control. We'll look at some of the stats here in a second, but Atlanta's been much better on Gavutu control. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but I think overall we have a Bocage that can go probably either way. I mean, we've seen Seattle when they get going on Bocage, it's like a different beast. You know, they've beaten Optic on it twice, I think. Maybe they didn't beat them the second time, but they've looked really good on it multiple times. I'm fine with going with Seattle pretty heavy, and you know what? I'm fine with going a game stack here. I know that's, again, a little crazy. It's something I typically try to reserve for certain scenarios, but I think it's live here. I think, again, we'll look at pricing and stuff. Hopefully you can get Seattle and Atlanta in. Maybe Seattle is overpriced or something. It'll be a weird scenario. Hopefully Seattle's cheap enough to where you can stack up Seattle and Atlanta. We've stressed about Bocage enough here on this channel, for my mouth at least, and you're giving me again the best two maps for Hardpoint and DFS in general. We're going to get a Bocage where Atlanta hasn't played that much. Everyone keeps banning Atlanta's Bocage. I get they're a really good map on it, or a really good team on that map. But Seattle's looked no slouch on that map either. Again, the concern is Seattle's numbers on these maps are not that great. Bocage 2-2, Tuscan 1-2, Gavutu control 0-2. Those are not inspiring numbers, but I think overall Seattle's a little underrated. I think Atlanta's a little overrated. I think Atlanta's really good still, obviously. That's a little bit outlandish to say. I just had them as the number 2 team in the league, but I think overall this is going to be a pretty close back and forth series. I think you're getting the two best hardpoint maps you can get with Bocage and Tuscan. I think you can get enough DFS goodness from this series on both sides. I think, again, all the check marks are there for me. We have a series where it's very likely to be really good maps, Seattle, Atlanta. We have two series where it's very unlikely to get Bocage. It'll come down to pricing. Like if somebody like Optic is simply mispriced or something, then we have a different conversation. But based off of what I expect, I think Optic is going to be super expensive. We're going to see Shotzi, Dashy be 10K each. Scumpy's going to be like 8 something. It's going to be tough to get all those guys in. I think Boston's going to be kind of cheap. They're going to be pretty popular as well. Usually they are. We're probably going to see Capsule 10K. Methods probably in the 8s. TJ Halley probably in the 7s. Based on what we've seen. I'm fine with going to the Atlanta-Seattle stacks. I'm fine with even putting Seattle maybe as like a little bit of the primary in those stacks, because I think they have some upside and they've shown some good slaying power themselves. I think Abeezy's been a little bit underperforming. I think RC's is a little bit underperforming. I think the main two you want would be Simp and Celium. They've been really good individually, I think. Over on the Seattle side, I think it's probably going to be Sib, Pred, maybe Accuracy. It's kind of tough to guess afterward, like after those players. But let's see if we look here. It'd be Mac, Sib, Pred, Sib, Pred, Mac. So maybe it is Sib, Pred, and Mac. And then pair them up with maybe Simp and Celium. I like the sound of that. Again, we've talked about this many, many times. I don't want to continuously regurgitate the same stuff over and over, but Bocage really can create that kind of scenario. I think these two teams are close enough in skill where it's a possibility, and it's a shot I'm going to take. I might end up having one lineup on the night, and I might end up just going all in on Seattle Atlanta stacks. We'll have to look at pricing and stuff. I'll try to keep you guys updated if pricing comes out. But this makes a lot of sense. This is the direction I'm going to be going. I like stacking up Seattle, Atlanta, letting it go that way. There can be some scenarios, maybe some one-offs are a little bit better. Like maybe Dashi has a really good game, or Methods has a really good game, maybe Awakening has a really good game. But overall, I think I'm fine going to maybe like a couple optic player, or maybe a hypothetical lineup I'm thinking of is maybe you go like Sib Pred, Methods Awakening, and like Dashi. That seems like a really, really unique, different approach that can pan out. The problem with stacking the like Awakening Methods is they're going to have really bad maps. That's also like when it comes down to. So maybe you can just stick to like Awakening and hope he has a good individual performance. Maybe get to somebody like Celium. I think if you do want a game stack, you don't have to go full crazy with like a 3-2. I think it is possible where a lot of players go off from the same series. It just seems pretty unlikely. So maybe you want to stick to like maybe a 2-1. Maybe you go like Sib Pred Celium, and then you have like some other players like Awakening Methods, Dashy Scump, something like that. So that's going to be a weird, unique approach. Again, I keep refreshing it, but it doesn't look like salary is going to be out. So I'm probably just going to have to reserve everything, wake up and make my lineups like 30 minutes before lock or something. So that's a little unfortunate. Would like to have talked pricing and pivots and all that stuff, like we typically do. So, yeah, I think that'll be it. It's going to be, again, a pretty unique approach to this slate. Probably I rarely do this, but I kind of want to give out some like more specific picks. I think Optic 3-0, but I don't love their upside because the maps are probably going to be really bad for them. Florida Boston, I think Boston 3-1, but I still think even in that scenario, Florida can have some good maps. I think when you look at the two teams overall, I think Boston typically are a team that has pretty bad performances or pretty bad like kill death ratios, and Florida has decent ones, even in like losses. That's what I'm trying to bring up here. Show like how they're performing typically. So I'm gonna guess these stats are not that great, but mainly when it comes down to somebody like Awakening, that's mainly what I'm talking about. Same thing with like Methods. Methods' numbers are crazy lately. Same with Awakening. So I'm fine with getting to both of them. Maybe mixing and matching. I just think they're both viable. We'll have to wait and see pricing and stuff. That's kind of what it comes down to. Probably Boston 3-1, but I think even in that scenario, Awakening can do enough. Atlanta, Seattle. Again, kind of just talked about this one. Probably, I'm gonna go with Seattle 3-1 or 3-2. I think this is gonna be a pretty close series, and I think in that situation we finally can like get what we're looking for from Seattle. We can maybe expose Atlanta a little bit. I just think this series is going to be a lot closer than the odds are indicating right now. So I'm going to take the Seattle side. I think this is going to be a pretty close series. I think for DFS purposes, there can be a lot of upside and a lot of goodness here. We talked about players, but I think it's mainly Sib and Pred on the Seattle side. They've been playing pretty well individually. Over on the Atlanta FaZe side, probably Simp and Celium. Arcides, I think, is somebody you want to typically avoid, and Abizi's been slumping pretty hard. So those are going to be my guys. I think Sib, Pred, maybe Mac, Simp, and Celium. I don't know if I'm going to ever get a third Atlanta FaZe guy in. So yeah, that'll be it for me today. I think, unfortunately, this is going to be the last DFS slate for Call of Duty for a while. This is the end. This is the last DFS slate for Major 2. Typically, they do multiple games a day with the same teams from here on out. There's only 7 teams remaining, so it's hard to make a slate with a few teams. So, don't know when Major 3 starts. Maybe we can. Maybe there is a date on that, but I think there is a break in between then. Let's see. Yeah, there's no info on it yet. Qualifiers maybe. Oh, 5/13. Yeah, so there's a month off, I think, in between here and the second half of the season, if you will. So we'll we'll have a few months off. Maybe they have stuff for All Stars or Resurgence or this Pro Am Classic or whatever. I don't know. I doubt it, but you know, last Call of Duty slate for a while. Let's hopefully make it count. And I will see you guys when CS:GO picks back up or League of Legends picks back up. For the near future, it doesn't look like there's going to be much happening. So I'll see you guys when I see you.